Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Our guest today is BowTiedYanqui, also known as the Sovereign Wolf. He's a U.S. expat living in Argentina and writing about his experiences abroad. Mr. Sovereign Wolf, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing really well, Mr. Latin Life. My Latin Life.
Mr. My Latin Life.
Yeah.
Like the ring of that. Cool. Well, no, thank you for coming on the show. Argentina is, of course, a perennial favorite for Americans, for Europeans, pretty much for everybody around the world, kind of looking for a plan B, looking to have a new start. And so I thought on this episode, we would just talk about kind of some of the observations, the cultural realities, and see where it leads us being a U.S. expat in Argentina. How's that sound?
That sounds really good. It's been quite a journey, let me tell you. But I'm all for Plan B. I think everybody should have a Plan B. Absolutely. Which has become my Plan A.
Yeah, became the Plan A. What
Right.
inspired you to start the Twitter account and kind of get out there and share your experiences online?
Well, it's when Elon Musk took over X or Twitter in those days, and then turned it into X. I decided to. I heard rumors that he was going to take over, and he was very active on the platform because I'd had a Twitter account years and years ago, and I closed it because it had just become so toxic. Because it was just controlled by the left and controlled by Democrats, and it's just the old Twitter armies and all this other stuff. So I don't need part of that. So I was not even on the platform for years and years. And then the rumor came up that Elon Musk was going to take over, and so I came back, and then I stumbled upon this whole movement, this BowTied movement of kind of this collection of blogs, and you can be anonymous on the platform. I'm slowly unanonymizing myself just because of I want to the service that I'm interested in promoting. Obviously, is going to be more. People like to see your face, and they like to see that you are a real person. You're not some AI bot. So anyway, I got into that and started really heavily looking into promoting, using the X platform for promotion. Because the great thing about the X platform that Elon has kind of molded is that there's a lot more businesses and a lot more serious people, not just people interested in just doing Facebook and doom scrolling, but there are people on the platform that are selling products and that also have businesses, and they're open to new ideas. And this is sort of the area that I wanted to tap into. So that's kind of what got me into Twitter and X in general, why I went the BowTiedYanqui route. But originally I just had it's kind of like a movement. The BowTied movement is just you have an animal and then you throw a bow tie on them. Like if you've ever followed BowTied Mara, for example, and but he is absolutely remaining anonymous. Although I have seen podcasts with him, but he keeps his face covered. And he's a good guy, real good guy. Another guy that I've been following kind of isn't of the BowTied persuasion, but he is anonymous and he's out of India, and his blog is called Life, Math, Money. And he's an excellent, he's got an excellent Twitter account. His blogs are fantastic. And I actually bought his course. It's called The Art of X, and used to be called Art of Twitter. And the interesting thing about his product is that he continuously upgrades the product. You pay once, and then you're always getting new material because the X algorithm is changing constantly and new things come up. So anyway, that's very high value product if you actually are interested in that. but or anybody out there listening.
Mhm.
I can't say enough good things about his service. And but anyway, that's kind of where I was coming from and why I'm on X. And what I've been doing is just building my account, increasing followers, um, and getting to the point where if you follow the Art of X says get to about like 2,000 followers, and you can actually start promoting products. And
Yeah,
come up with a lead magnet, all that. So that's kind of the path I'm following.
that's cool. Yeah, the hardest part's obviously the first thousand. We've had a
Yes.
lot of bow tied people on. Otherwise, I would have you explain what bow tied is in more detail. Maybe some people in the audience probably still don't know what it is, but we've had a lot of bow tied people on, so maybe we'll skip that. And I was just curious, you yourself, like, how long have you been in Argentina now?
Okay, so I've been here about 3 years. We moved in to Argentina in 2022. We, meaning my wife. My wife's Argentinian, and I'm, of course, from the United States originally, California, in fact. And so we've been here since 2022. And before that, we were living in Mexico. So I spent about 3 years in Mexico.
Hmm.
And then we decided, let's get married. And then we moved. In fact, we came to Bariloche, got married here in Bariloche. And then we moved to Buenos Aires for the first year. And then eventually we spent a little time in Cordoba, and then, which is a nice city as well. And now we're here in Bariloche. Though we just spent 4 months in Mar del Plata, that's also a really great town. And so as time goes on, we're going to try to experience these various areas in Argentina.
Okay, cool. So, sort of 4 years ish, but you're still popping around the country, figuring out what's the spot.
Well, Bariloche, I think, is going to be home base because we have a house here now. But
Okay.
yeah, but we decided let's go to Mar del Plata and experience life there. She used to live in Mar del Plata, and she said you're gonna love it there, and I did. It's a really great little city. Think Buenos Aires, but like light because it's a smaller version, very much smaller version, and it's
Mhm.
alongside. It has a coast. It has a beach, and beautiful beach, and um, so the culture there is out. People super friendly. Everything is like way cheaper there too as well. It's amazing how much cheaper things are, and it's a great. I highly recommend it. If you wanna get a starter like apartment or something, that's a good place to look. And it's extremely popular in the summer months because that's when everybody wants to come. Argentina, of course, being a cold country, it doesn't get a super hot summers for very long. It does get hot summers like they're baking in art in Buenos Aires, at least they were have a huge heat wave that they were
Mhm.
experiencing, but you get a lot of cold as well. And so when Argentinians finally do get some sun, they flock down to the beach. And so Mar del Plata has always been packed. You look at the beach and it's just people like practically standing shoulder to shoulder on the beach. It's incredible if you ever look at any of the pictures.
That's cool. Okay, if I a lot of things I want to ask about. I want to ask about you buying a house. I want to ask about Mar del Plata, but I want to get a little bit more of the story, a little bit more of the context where you're coming from. So, if you don't mind me asking, it sounds like you met your Argentine wife in Mexico.
That's correct. That's correct. We were in
Cool.
Acapulco, actually. We met in Acapulco. And
Acapulco. I imagine
yeah,
not too many Argentine girls out there. Most of them are in, Playa del Carmen and stuff.
it's very true. And she originally, when she came to Mexico, she was hanging out Cancun, that area. But then she started moving around a bit, found herself in Puebla for a while, and then was just out in Acapulco just on vacation, and we met. And it was kind of one of those things of love at first sight. So we connected at that point, and then she moved in, and then we got married. So it was like it was awesome. So it was one of those things where it just, yeah, I don't know how else to describe it except love at first sight. We just connected on some cellular level. It was really interesting. There's something I think it's because I've got Italian blood in my uh, uh, in my family. My great grandparents came from Italy,
Mhm.
and there's something about her that I just I just connected with. There's something on a certain level. And I find Argentine women in general, I just am far more attracted to than any other woman in the world, and she just has it all, you know. So, and she has a lot of Italian blood in her family as well, and so which you like I said, you find a lot here in Argentina. So we just like I said, we connected, and then we decided we shacked up, and then we said let's get married, and then they said hey let's go back to Argentina. So here we are.
That's cool. And so I'm just curious, were you in Mexico pre-pandemic or was this 2020 or was it 2019?
No, I actually moved there in 2019. So you're absolutely right. And so we were in Acapulco, then we moved to Guadalajara, picking up a couple of dogs on the way, by the way, which we have. We brought from Mexico, and we rode out the pandemic in Guadalajara in 2020. That was that wasn't a bad city to be in during the pandemic because you could still go out on the street. They didn't prevent you from leaving. What they did prevent you from doing is going from city to city. So like we tried to visit a neighboring city, which is kind of more in the mountains, and they just wouldn't even let us in. And but and they had restaurant, everything was closed down, you know. And there was the mask rules there, and the whole silly social distancing stuff that was all there too. But it wasn't a bad. It was an okay city to write out the pandemic in, honestly.
Okay, nice. And so if you were able to move down to Mexico in 2019, what were you doing to earn remote income?
Oh, I had a job online. Um, in fact, it was one of the first remote companies that really just took off. I don't know if you're familiar with the Exodus wallet, cryptocurrency wallet, but I worked for them completely remote, and that worked so well. I actually got the job in the United States, and then went through a divorce, and then said, you know, I'm going to go south. I'm just going to go check out Mexico, and so I just left. And I figured, hey, look, you know, I've got an online job. I'm making money completely online. I can do this anywhere in the world. So I chose to go to Mexico, and it was a great decision. It really was. It really opened my eyes to a lot of things because I don't know if you're originally from the United States. You kind of sound like you are. Um, yeah, but there's kind of this. I don't know. People tend to think of Mexico as being, well, shoot, even Donald Trump called it a shithole. People tend to think of it as being third world and dirty and awful. And there's some truth to that, but it's also a beautiful country. It just depends on where you go. There are some
Mm.
really there are places you should avoid, but there's also some really amazing places. And I really had a great time getting to know Mexico. I went to Acapulco, and yeah, I was in the touristy area, but I made friends down there, and then of course met my wife. And but for me, it was like a culture shock crossing the border the first time because it was the two countries are just so different from each other. In fact, I was having a conversation with somebody on X about this, where she's an Argentinian, and she kind of lumped Mexico in with America and Canada, and I went, well, Mexico really is a different place. Even the northern states, which are like more friendly to United States, like for example, you can
Mhm.
cross over with your car, and you could just be in the country with the car. There's no limit as long as you have the. If you just cross over with a tourist visa, you get like 180 days to be in the country, and you just
Mhm.
drive anywhere you want in the north. Not a problem. But if you, they don't care. But if you want to go south, like into central Mexico and down to Acapulco, that's when they have these rules that you can't keep your car for more than the time that your tourist visa says, and that you have to bring the car back to the border, or you can get into big trouble. They'll take your car away. So there's like things like that. So yeah, it's like more open. It used to even be that you could cross the border with just your driver's license, but they got rid of those rules. Now you have to have a passport. But
So
yeah,
you're from
it's
California.
and yeah. So I'm originally from California, so I just
Right.
drove. Northern California is where I used to live, and then I just drove south and crossed the border.
I'd imagine you'd been a couple times as a, over the years, or was it like a complete shock?
I actually did visit Mexico a couple of times. Um, I, I visited like in 2009, which I have to say there were places that I saw in 2009 that shocked me because it was just like these. I remember there was this area close to the borders, just shanty town. It was like corrugated roofs and
Hmm.
um, propped up wooden poles and
Corrugated
no,
roofs. That was the word I was looking for.
yeah, it was kind of creepy. And you go, do they even have running water? you know, and but then when I visited it again in 2016, I don't remember. Well, I didn't actually drive across the border in 2016, but it was when I came in 2019. I drove across the border, and I didn't see that. I expected to see that area near Tijuana, and it wasn't there. So you could just tell things actually had improved a lot in the country. So, um, and you, Guadalajara is a pretty world class city. It's a decent city.
Yeah.
It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but man, it offers an excellent quality of life. So there's things you have to get used to in Mexico, but that's overall a really good city. I really enjoyed living.
Yeah. I want to sort of, I guess, then combine observations of Mexico and Argentina. It's a little bit different, but just being an American in Latin America and what that difference in experience is like, what the lifestyle difference is like, observations you had. There's probably people listening to this that are interested in Argentina. Also, people interested listening to this because they're interested in burning the boats and taking the plunge and spending time in Latin America, moving down there. So what are some of the big differences, or what are the big things that you notice and that you tell people?
Well, when I crossed the border in Mexico for the first, really this is like seriously, I'm moving there. What One of the things that struck me is, well, first of all, in Mexico the roads are just nowhere near as nice as they are in the United States. Like everything's paved, and I'll say the same thing for like where I'm living here in Argentina. We don't have There's a good deal of the city that does not have paved roads. So as an American, when I saw that the first time, I thought, well, this is just I guess this is not a completed project here. What's the story with these dirt roads? But it is the way that it is, and you get used to it. But um, in Mexico, there's just certain architectural features. For example, the houses have these big water tanks that are you see them everywhere. They're usually perched on top of their house. Oh, and that you don't really find wood houses. Everything's made of stone and brick. A lot of brick houses. These big, not like cozy Americana bricks, but I mean these big brick pieces that they use to construct the walls. So you typically have like really sturdy houses, really solid walls. So little things like I want to hang a photo. So you need a special drill that can get through concrete, essentially, just to hang something on your wall. It's a little different experience.
That's funny.
And then even things like, okay, in California at least, you have central heat and air. They don't really have that when you go across the border. And this is true everywhere I've been in Latin America. I've been to Brazil, I've been to Argentina, obviously, Mexico, and those countries. I haven't been to any other countries really, or at least not really, like passing through the airport. But the from what I can tell, the air conditioning units are typically like kind of like the one that you when I saw your when we had video on, you had an air conditioning unit behind you, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like that, where they're wall mounted. You have one per room, and they have these compressors that are outside with the big fans on them, and that's typical, right? And then for heating, you'll have just radiator pipes in. You don't see too much of that in Mexico because they don't, unless you're living in the mountains. You don't really have. It's not really cold, but in Argentina, oh, it gets cold, especially Bariloche. And so just little things like that. The architectural features are different, and the big one is the water tank inside the house, which I thought was just kind of a weird thing. As cities improve, water pressure, central water pressure gets better, but there still is a tradition to build these tanks because sometimes the pressure can fall off. And like in Buenos Aires, when you go into what they call the provincia, which are places not in Capital Federal, but outside, so it's a little more rural. They typically will just have. They won't even have central water. They'll have a well, and you have a pump, and the pump pumps up into the tank, and then you get some water pressure. Sometimes the water pressure isn't as good, so that they'll throw a water pump in there to increase the pressure in the house, which
Hmm.
that's what we have in our house. These little things, like in America, everything is just centralized on the grid. And for example, in Mexico, they didn't have central gas. So you
Hmm.
have to call a gas service to come out and fill your tank.
Yep.
So, and in a lot of areas in Argentina are like that too. We're lucky because there is a gas grid and we're on it. Thank goodness. It's really a nice thing. The little things you learn to appreciate. You just take them for granted when you're in the United States because the infrastructure is so built out and so good in the United States that you have no idea how good it is. Every street is well paved, well marked. You get into Mexico and you're like driving down a public road, and the next thing you know, you're catching air. You're in the air like a meter. You're like, what the hell? It's because you didn't see the speed bump that you just hit. That's like, standing like 2 or 3 feet. It's like 2 or 3 feet tall, and so your car catches air. So you really learn to be very careful because they're not marked, not like the United States. Everything's very regulated. So it's one of the things that you have to get used to. Another oddity, and this is pretty fun, is since the sewage pipes and things like that are hooked up in your house and everything like that aren't built to handle toilet paper. Now the newer buildings and stuff can handle a little bit better, like in the airport, but it is tradition to have a garbage can next to the toilet, and you put your used toilet paper in the wastebasket next to the toilet,
Hmm.
which is something that, I mean, in America we just throw it in the toilet. You don't think twice of it, but in Latin America that seems to be pretty consistent. Everywhere I've been, even airports, they always have a wastebasket. And I remember seeing, I was in San Francisco and they had a lot of Mexican immigrants coming in, and there was a sign in Spanish in the bathroom that said, please don't throw your toilet paper in the trash can, throw it in the toilet, because people weren't used to it. People are totally used to having a wastebasket. So little cultural differences.
And yeah, there's a couple thoughts there. It definitely teaches you survival skills, right?
Yes. And not to take your way of life for granted, to open your mind and say, how do they live here? Because I need to know. Because at first, I had gone to Acapulco thinking it was just like, I don't know, America Light, and I'm like, no, no, this is. So I began to discover things like, for example, the Mexicans, they don't sing happy birthday like we do. they have this completely different song, Las Mañanitas, I think is what it's called, and
Hmm.
it 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 has its own lyrics and its own tune, and you get used to it. But at first, I was like, wow, it was interesting to be in this other culture, and things like the Day of the Dead is this rich. When I first saw it, how morbid, skulls everywhere, and Katrina and Katrine. But it's actually really a holiday that's full of color. It's just because the Mexican people are kind of used to death, and so they have this 3 days. Right after Halloween, it's like Halloween, and then there's 2 days of Day of the Dead,
Hmm.
1st and 2nd of November, and that is a big, big, big celebration in Mexico. If you go to like Morelia, which is the capital of Michoacan, which
Hmm.
is in central Mexico, uh, they, they in the downtown they have this big cathedral, and they completely convert the whole property into these little Day of the Dead vignettes made with chalk and with flowers, and it's an incredible celebration, very colorful. And I was like, wow, this is just, I didn't see this coming and I didn't expect it. So that was actually quite a pleasant surprise to just, so you go, oh, what do they do? And then, of course, Thanksgiving comes and goes and nobody cares because they don't celebrate Thanksgiving. The little things you have to get used to.
Hmm.
Christmas, yes, but Thanksgiving, no, that's an American thing. So little things like that, and the importance of holidays like Day of the Dead, um, I think add the spice of life. And of course, speaking of spice, tacos everywhere, which are one of my favorite things. Now but I used to think, oh, hey, south of the border, it's all hot food, right? They love it. No, that's a Mexican thing. And the Mexicans, no, the Mexicans eat the hottest freaking. Okay, so a small joke. I was hanging out with some expats in Acapulco, and we had a Mexican gal that was with us, and one guy goes, "Is this salsa hot?" And she goes, "No." And he took a bit, and his mouth was on fire for the rest of the time. And he's like, "Oh my god!" And everyone laughed, and I said, "What did you expect asking a Mexican?" Of course, to her, it's not hot at all, but to us, it's like blow your top off hot. And you don't even want to touch the stuff that she says is hot. So when you go further south, you find that the spicy food falls off. Very popular in South America, in I think Central America too, is just like they like they like beans and rice, right? But it's not. They don't put any hot anything. I think in Peru they like hot. You can find spicy, and you can find some spicy in Brazil, but it isn't the same. And boy, in Argentina, there's no spicy food. I remember the first time we came here and I went to a restaurant and I was really I need something spicy in this, man. So I asked the guy if he could bring me some hot sauce. You have any hot sauce? And he brings it and he says, pero ojo, which means, be careful. This is very, very hot. I said, oh, thanks. And it wasn't hot at all. I mean, it was just a little bit, but to him, that was fire hot. So yeah, Argentina, it's a different story. It's not, in fact, you come here and you see the kind of food they have is almost totally unlike anything else in Latin America because they're big on pastas. They're big on a lot of Italian food. You're going to find really good pizza, really good pastas. Ice creams are out of this world, like more like gelato than ice cream. Um, and then the asado is big too, and it's its own. Asado is of course barbecue. They're big on beef, big, big, big. So that to me was an interesting thing. My wife introduced me to a lot of, for example, what they call porotos, which is beans, well, like a white bean. Those are only popular in the winter. So you make like this thick bean dish that's really great in the winter, because it warms you up. But it's not like you go to Brazil and you get the dish of what do they call that? Feijoa, I think is what they call it. Feijoa. I think I'm saying it wrong, but it's a bean. It's
Yeah.
like almost like a chili, but it's not hot at all. And then you put this. you usually do get it with rice, and then you put this like it's almost like a cheese. It reminds me of a cheese, but it's not. It's a bread product. You put that on the top. It's got names, and I'm forgetting. Please forgive me, but that was one you get that with like practically every meal. So, but Argentina, totally different story.
Yeah, a lot in common and definitely a lot different. Would you agree that Argentina is probably, in some ways, the easier landing spot for expats, particularly maybe like expat families or retirees?
I would agree with that. I think it's probably better because well, it would be the same. I would think it'd be like if you were thinking, well, I want to go to Europe, right? It would be a lot like more like that than say Mexico or Brazil or Colombia or any of these other typical destination places. Um, because Argentina and Uruguay is real similar to Argentina, like really similar.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, you come here and it's good. I think you probably feel a little bit more at home, though it's still a foreign country. It still has its own values. Obviously, they speak Spanish here, so there's still a lot of things to get used to. It's not, and there are a lot of things to get used to that are just kind of strange. Um, but it's not a deal
So
breaker by any
I get
stretch of
this
the imagination.
question a lot. Like people are like, let's say like a family of four, they're fed up with the US or Canada, they want to move south. What do you think would be a softer landing, Mexico or Argentina?
I'd probably say Argentina because you'd come to Buenos Aires and you would go. It's just feels more like a Western country. Yeah, they're all Western countries, but this really feels this to me. It has more in common with the United States than Mexico. Mexico is a lot more to get used to there, whereas here, and I don't want to sound racist, but it's a lot more white here as well, and so you fit in a little bit better, right?
Mhm.
Um, so you mainly the races here in Argentina are white, and then like mapacho, kind of like there's like a little bit of what they call native
Yeah,
people that
indigenous,
are
a
here,
bit more up in the
indigenous, yeah,
north.
yeah. But yes, exactly. You get like Bolivia, kind of bleed over across but it's like you go to Argentina, it's a lot of white people, and so the culture I think is way more aligned with the United States than I think Mexico would be. Um, that'd
Mhm.
be my opinion. So yeah, family of four wanted to come here, but you know, it's at least until recently anyway. It's a lot easier to immigrate here. It used to be that you could just immigrate, you could get your citizenship and everything, and you could even leave the country. But now they're starting to say no. You get your, you get your permanent residency. You have to stay in the country for the 2 years or more before you can get your citizenship. But you could still get a residency, and there are a lot of various ways to do that. So with me, of course, I got married, so I automatically qualified for everything. But you can there are a couple of different tourists. There are a couple of different visas that you can engage in, and you could get eventually you could get the permanent residency.
Yep.
But yeah, I would say
If
yeah,
you mind if I do a quick plug, of course, My Latin
sure.
Life for immigration consultancy. We help people get residency in Mexico, in Argentina, and in every country in Latin America. We help lots of people do this, all ages. So yeah, people, link in the description. If you're listening to this podcast, scroll down to the description of the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. There's a link where you can book a call with us, and we can get this residency card in your hands. Okay, so with that quick plug out of
I
the
highly
way,
recommend it. Highly recommend it. Go the route. That's part of the plan B.
let's what can we touch upon next? So I got a juicy one for you because it sounds like you've been married twice.
Yes. Yes.
So juicy one. Don't get yourself in trouble here. Take don't say anything that you're going to make me have to edit out later. But what are some of the differences between being in a marriage to an American woman versus a Argentine woman?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Um, so, especially considering there's a language barrier,
Mm.
and when I first moved to Mexico, I didn't speak any Spanish, and I met my wife. Her name's Sol, and basically, we hit it off. We just connected. And at first, I thought she spoke English because she knew a few phrases, and she asked me for her, she asked me for my number, right? And then she started WhatsApping me, and it was like all Spanish. I'm like, oh man, I've got to learn Spanish. So I grabbed Duolingo and I started studying like a crazy man. But so at first, when we were using Google Translate to talk to each other, so because she didn't speak English and not well enough to really, carry on big conversations, and I didn't speak any Spanish. And so that was that right there was an interesting experience. Try having an argument with a translator in your hand. It's just hilarious. It's like, she would say something and I'd read the translation. I would go to respond and she'd grab the damn phone out of my hand. I can't respond. It was just really funny. So uh, that right there was interesting, the language barrier. Now I've since learned to speak Spanish, but even still, sometimes there's some misunderstandings. Like she'll say a phrase and it doesn't make any sense to me. And then she has to explain, no, 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 that's like una forma de decir. That's a way of saying something. It's colloquial. It doesn't mean what it literally translates to. It means this. Oh, and then so sometimes you just, there's a little cultural thing. And other times it can be completely understandable Spanish, but the culture is different. Okay, so I'll give you an example. We were going to spend Christmas. I I had some gringo friends, invited them over for Christmas. And then we're getting close to the day. It's like the next day. And she's just like, okay, so when they come over, on the 24th, and I'm like, what do you mean come over on the 24th? Well, we're going to have Christmas here, right? And I'm like, we're not going to spend Christmas Eve. We're going to spend Christmas Day. We're going to have, the dinner during the day. And she actually started crying because she's like, but I really need to have, she's like trying to explain to me that you're supposed to have it on Christmas Eve. And that was a cultural point I didn't even know. I mean, the Americans, we have a Christmas Day, right? Christmas Eve, sometimes you can have family over, but typically it's Christmas Day, man. You open the presents in the morning and then you have the big family dinner. And that's not the way they do it here. They spend like all night, basically. So here's how it goes. Family comes over late at night. So they come over like 10, 11, right? And, or maybe 9, but you spend the time, you have your dinner, you're talking, and then midnight shows up and outside they're setting fireworks off. So as soon as you get midnight on Christmas Eve, big fireworks, right? And then everybody toasts and stuff, and then you spend the rest of the night having more dinner and more things. And I'm falling asleep at 3 in the morning, but the family is just carrying on. So the idea is you go till dawn. That's just the way they do things here.
Till
Uh,
dawn.
yeah, it's crazy.
Oh my god, that's
Sometimes you don't
Argentina.
make it, but that's no, it is. Parties. We got invited to a friend's birthday party. She rented this convention area in her apartment complex, and
Uh,
everybody showed up. And I thought, oh, we'll probably go to like 2 in the morning or something. And these people were partying hardy at 4 a.m. And I'm like falling asleep on the couch, and all the Argentinians are making fun of the gringo passed out, on the couch. It's like I can't do this. So it's stuff like that. We went to a wedding, same thing, all night long. The bus came and picked us up. They rented what they call a micro, right? Bus came, picked us up, took us to the wedding, and the bus didn't come to pick us up until 6 in the morning. And so we were there all night long. Now my wedding was a little different because there was COVID. It was just the tail end of COVID, and they cut us short. They said, they said, well, we can only do the ceremony and a little bit of the reception, and that's it. And people were telling me, it was like, this is crazy because normally we're in Argentina. This should go on all night, but it didn't. So, but we went to a friend's wedding in Uruguay, and it was just, that's the way it's supposed to be all night long. So it is funny because I'm falling asleep at 3 in the morning on a couch, and I look over, and the groom is just partying hardy on the dance floor with the bride and everybody else. And I'm like, man, how did these people do it? So yeah, it's a different story.
Yeah, I think yeah, Mexico is also Christmas Eve mostly, but it's not going till dawn. I think they just start a bit earlier. Argentina is
Right.
just the latest people
Yeah, it's I notice in this
partiers.
southern cone, and I don't know if they do the same thing in Brazil, but I guess they do.
I
But
don't think so.
Uruguay, yeah, Uruguay and Argentina, they share this. I'm not sure about Paraguay and Bolivia, but I know that's what they do here. So it's kind of crazy. But yeah, you're right. Mexico also is a Christmas Eve thing, so that took a little bit to get used to. But
They do the thing with the grapes in Argentina where you have to
grapes?
eat. Yeah, I guess that doesn't ring a bell.
Oh yeah, wait a
There's this thing
minute.
where you have to eat like 12 grapes at midnight, something like that.
Some something about you get a prize or something. Yes, there's something to do with that. I got to ask my wife mentioned that, but we didn't actually do that. But yeah, she said that's a tradition. Uh, Betonel is another tradition. It's like this cold beef, um, almost like a soup thing, where the beef is in like this kind of cream sauce, and it's actually really good. But that's very big in Christmas as well. So yeah, they have their traditions, and they're different.
Okay, and then back to the marriage thing. Let you get off on that and get back to and start talking about Christmas. We don't talk about dating on the podcast at all, really, but I feel like marriage is a little bit different, or it's kind of an exception in my book because it's a long term relationship, build a family, all that stuff. So, what are some of the other things you noticed about the relationship? The language barrier is definitely a huge one. Um, Maybe something about like organizational skills, mathematical skills. I don't know. Like what else would you tell people?
For what, like for dating?
No, not no, I mean not for dating. Like yeah, I guess like in marriage or in a partner in general. Um, Differences between say an American spouse versus a Argentine or a Latina spouse, just kind of like pros and cons of each.
The Well, I compare my ex-wife in the United States with my current wife now, and
I'm going to
she
get you in
was
trouble. You don't have to do that. You can do more general.
no, that's it's fine. She was more feminist. Just the I'm not going to throw under the bus, but just her attitudes and stuff much more along the lines of we I mean, things like one day she just said, I'm not going to fold your socks anymore. You have to do that yourself. You have to do your own laundry and everything. And she just decided to, nope, that you have to do your own stuff. I'm not doing that anymore. And so I had to do that. But my current wife is just like, no way I'm doing that. Sometimes I will help her when she's really stressed at other things, but for the most part, she insists on doing that stuff for me. So that was a cultural difference that I actually liked. She told me it's my passion to take care of you. She literally used those
Mm.
words. So she wants to take care of me, whereas the ex kind of had this, it was almost more like an obligation to do those things, and she was happy to cut them loose when she could. So,
Mm.
but then again, it wasn't a loving relationship like the one I have now. And so that was the other things. The Argentina is just so warm. And that's another cultural difference that I really like is that even, and this is something you kind of got to get used to, is that the men actually, like there's a little, like when you meet a woman, you do a little kiss on the cheek. It's not really a kiss, but you kind of touch cheeks and go make a kiss noise, right? The men do that too, like with your family, right? Which I thought was, and sometimes even close friends, they do the same thing.
Yep.
So it's men meeting each other will still do the handshake thing, but after you get to know each other, the hug and the air kiss happens. And so it's that is something that's I don't know. I liked it because I thought it kind of felt Italian. It's
Hmm.
the people are very much more warm and compassionate, and my wife has just got so much love, for me. I never, it's I just a night and day difference. My old life, I felt lonely. I couldn't believe I was married, surrounded by people. I just felt so lonely. I don't feel that way at all. And it's just my wife and I here in this house in Bariloche, and I feel very much fulfilled. So um, it, I don't know. I felt that when I dated Mexican, when I was dating between marriages, right, between relationships, I dated Mexicans and I felt them to be much more cold, much colder as
Really
compared. Yeah,
interesting.
I just felt them to be. I just I okay, not a huge sample size. It was only two girls that I dated, but they both were very similar. Like they held me at arm's length, and I never felt like I was really connected with them at all. And I instantly felt that way with Soul. So um, uh, that's the takeaway for me. So dating wise, I don't know. Check out Argentina. I think you're going to have a lot more luck. If that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, the take care of you thing is definitely huge. So we only have a little bit of time left, but um, so did you buy a house in Bariloche, if I may
Yeah,
ask, or
yeah. We
what was
actually,
that experience like?
well, I had to put it in my wife's name because at the time I didn't have my citizenship yet, and they had this law. I think Millet got rid
Wait, do
of
you
it.
have it now?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you got the citizenship.
I got my citizenship recently. So well, I got it. I think I finally got it in 2024, 2023, 2024. It took me about 2.5 years to get the thing. So very long process. But yeah, I swore in and everything, and it was really neat. Swore before a judge. I said I basically swore to the flag, which was pretty cool. So yeah, I'm a full fledged citizen, and even voted in the last elections. That's really cool. But there was a law that basically what they call a security zone. If you're within, I don't know, 300 kilometers or something like that of the border, you're not allowed. Foreigners can't buy that land. And Mexico has something similar. Like you can't buy beachfront property if you're a
Hmm.
foreigner. You have to do this weird thing. So, but I think Millet got rid of that law because he wanted to encourage more outside investment. So maybe that doesn't apply anymore. But at the time, I had to do it that way just because my wife, obviously a citizen, and you know, we had just gotten married, but I hadn't gone through the process yet. And it, if I had to go do it all over again, I probably would make sure that I had, an attorney present and all this other stuff. Just because the guy we bought the house from, he didn't he didn't cross all the i's and dot he didn't cross all the t's and dot the i's. So if you're gonna do anything, you got to make sure you got to have all the permits and everything correctly done. And this guy was he didn't do any of that, and yeah, it's pretty bad. Though he sold us this great property here in this beautiful complex. It's a gated community. It's got security. It's really great. But there's a lot of things. Well, we had an architect, and the architect just disappeared, just sort of defected. We don't know what happened to him. Yeah, so we hired in fact, the architect of this complex, and he made sure that everything was right. So,
So you
I
bought like an empty plot in the private community, and then you had to build a house.
yes, and this guy built the house, his company, but he left a lot of things hanging. And I don't know if I had to go do it over again. I'm going to buy a house that's already done. I want to go through this again. Oh my! But it was an experience, and but we do have a really nice house to show for it, and it's God, it's really great living here. I really love this area. It's just you can see forest all around you. I got a small lake view because Bariloche is right next to a lake, Lake
Hmm.
Nuawapi,
Hmm.
and so it's worth it. It's worth having. Um, and the property prices here are a fraction of what they are in the United States. So no matter what, you're still it's the value is great.
Hmm.
Now don't expect huge property skyrocketing like you do in the United States, but you could spend almost $200,000 and get an awesome house, with lots of rooms and two levels, and especially like this place is great because it's got security, and so that is one of the that's an awesome thing to have. So because there sometimes they have some they do experience burglaries in Bariloche, which is really sad. So it's just nice to not have to worry about that. So yeah, that's what we got going on over here. So yeah, I got pretty well established here in Argentina. Not planning to go anywhere else. I have no desire to live anywhere else. Having spent 3 months over in Brazil, and then we spent another 4 months in Mar del Plata, that just led us, both my wife and I, to go to make us appreciate what we have here in Bariloche. So great little town.
That's cool. Yeah, Bariloche is bigger than most people expect. Like it's like the population. If you look at it on a map, it actually sprawls quite a bit.
It's a big little town. It's actually is a little town. It's not that you can cross it in like 15, 20 minutes. It's not. It isn't very big as compared to, say, Mar del Plata is much bigger, right? But even then, Mar del Plata actually isn't that big. Um, but Barry is a smaller town. Lots of people come from for tourism, though. So that's what I think is interesting, is that you'll have calm days, but then the road coming from the airport, which is where we live, is packed. All these tourists are coming. Right, you go downtown, and it's like walking in New York City. There's people all over the sidewalk, and it's hard to even get past anybody. But then that's like Avenida Mitre, which is the main drag, right, where all the restaurants and the chocolate shops and all that stuff are down there. But you go up, a couple of blocks, and it's quiet. So that's just that's what it's like living in a tourist town. Um, and we get two different seasons. We get one in the summer and then one in the winter because everyone comes for the skiing.
Hmm.
And so that's really big in Bariloche. So, but yeah, it takes a little getting used to with the. But what's great about where we are is there's not a lot of tourists, so it's pretty quiet here, and I love it. And it's just great to get out of the hustle and bustle, I tell you. So peace of mind out here. A lot of peace of mind for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think on Twitter there's a lot of discussion about how much it actually costs to buy or build property in Argentina, and there's huge ranges. Like people kind of don't believe that it can be done super cheaply, that kind of thing. But like, what would you recommend, or what would you say that like what would it cost for, I guess, the land and to build a house, or to buy an existing house in Bariloche?
So yeah, so I mean, a decent plot of land probably run you 50 grand. One you could build a pretty good size house on, for example. It depends on, yeah. Now Bariloche is more expensive than other areas in Argentina. So
Hmm.
all told, we spent just about 200,000, and we got a house with 4 rooms, 4 bedrooms, two, three actually full baths, and a double decker with a huge plot of land. So that's what we bought. That's what we paid, and which I think is just like I think probably housing prices have gone up a little bit, but that's roughly what you can expect. If you plunk in $500,000, you can get a bigger house with a lot more land. There's some veritable mansions here in this area. It's incredible. Um, there is some very expensive property, so it just depends on what you want to put down. You can spend $1 million on a house too, but it's, of course, it's like more like a mansion than it is, a regular house.
Wait. So
Um,
so to build was 150 or to 200 or was 200?
it's all about 200,000 all told to
All
build
in with
with
the
it,
plot of land.
property and everything. And it's
Wow,
not,
that's not
yeah,
bad.
no, not at all, not at all.
Being
So
a private community, what's the HOA?
it's just a local consortium, and then you pay monthly dues.
Like,
And
what would be the monthly dues to give people an idea? Because
so
who
you
knows how
know,
expensive that stuff is in
so
California.
so you're talking like maybe $150 a month. Depending.
150.
Yeah, 150.
Okay.
So it used to be a lot cheaper, but they're building a lot of stuff out, and so they've had to raise a lot of the costs because they're building some stuff. So, but uh, it depends on the consortium. If you don't want that, you don't have to have it. But I like the peace of mind. So myself, and it's
No,
just great.
totally. I think that would surprise a lot of people hearing this, how cheap it actually can be, like to get a house in Bariloche, world famous, world renowned ski town for $200,000. That sounds pretty good.
And that's decent. You can get cheaper, you can get more expensive. It just depends on how much you're willing to put down. But yeah, no, it's not like California prices or you know, um, it's a little more rural here. You can get something in central, but it's going to be a little bit more expensive.
Hmm.
Another great starter place is Mar del Plata. I think is great value for the money. Really, I
Mhm.
mean, really cheap. Like you could buy an apartment for $60,000. It's nothing, and it's a decent apartment. So depends. Of course, Buenos Aires, it depends on the area that you decide to buy in Buenos Aires. There are areas that are more expensive than others, and so like if you go to like Capital Federal, which is like the main area of Buenos Aires, the city proper, what they
Mhm.
call Cava.
Yeah.
Uh, that's more expensive
It can
than
be expensive
Provincia.
in the good areas. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're actually over time, but
Oh,
we're gonna go like 10 more minutes just because I'm very curious about this.
sure.
So someone might think that the default opinion or view would be that building in Argentina must just be an absolute nightmare. You had an architect run out on you and this and that. Was it a relatively smooth process to build? What was, and they must, it sounds like they knew that a gringo was involved. So do you feel like they tried to finesse you a little bit more, knowing that a gringo was going to be the owner, or how did some of that go?
They, I, there were at one point they came and they said, well, since they lost the plans, they built a house that was bigger than was in the original plans, and then they came to me and they tried to get 20,000 extra dollars out of me. And I'm like, no, it's like this is your mistake. Your architect skipped out. You guys don't have the plans. Like this is not our fault. This is your fault. And so, um, but the truth is that this same guy, it wasn't just us. He had a couple of the properties here that he was trying to build, and he did such a bad job that they wound up firing. Like he built the convention center here, the place where you could rent to have. There's a barbecue and it's got a bunch of tables and stuff. It's a really nice little thing, but they basically threw all his work out. That's how bad he was. So, and we had to replace some stuff that he did even on our own house. So, look, I'm not saying this is indicative of everybody here because I've seen a lot of new houses being built quickly and very high quality. So there are good companies. You just have to do your research. We went with this guy because he was a brother-in-law of my wife's best friend from childhood. And I said, okay, so this is probably going to be a reasonable bet. Hey, that nothing substitutes due diligence. And I highly recommend you do your due diligence and make sure that everything's, get professionals to help you, get the recommendations, get a lawyer, get the whole thing, and that way you'll avoid a lot of the mess that we went through. Having said all that, it wasn't that bad. The only problem was things were going, they were building, they put in the radiator pipes, they built the floor, did all this stuff, and then all of a sudden the work just stopped. And we had to keep pestering, like, what's going on? I mean, finally, he'd come and he'd do some more. And then, we'd wait. And then finally somebody would come and then do some more. And we just we kept having to get after this guy. And it actually ruined the relationship with my wife's friend. They don't speak to each other anymore. That's how bad that was. So, um, but in the final analysis, it's done. And, thank God.
What was the reason they gave that they kind of stopped working?
Hey, I don't know. The guy just kept giving all kinds of excuses, and oh yeah, it's on the way, and yeah, blah blah. And we were going back and forth between his main guy and all this. It was just a big back and forth. The general contractor guy that was working with us wasn't happy at all working for him, and he developed quite a reputation in town where people stopped doing work for him because he wouldn't pay. So he'd get you to come and do all this stuff, then he wouldn't pay you. And so, I mean, he's absolutely destroyed his reputation in town. So, and I don't know, but we broke off contact with the guy, and we're happy. So
As
to
we get
have
to
him out of our
wrapping up,
life.
any like last minute pieces of advice on things you wish you did better? Like, let's just say, let's just say I came down and wanted to do a house. Like, what would you do a little bit differently, either on like the legal side to protect yourself, or on the build quality, or anything that comes to mind?
Well, obviously, a lawyer up front day one and a good architect. So I can't say enough how important a good architect is, because a good architect controls all the variables, has all the designs, he makes sure that everything gets done right. And so I would have done that. Honestly, if I had to do it over again, I'd just buy a new house, a house that was already built, and not even
Uh,
bother. So
yeah.
that was an experience. Just like, geez, just buy something that's already built. Um, and Probably a good idea. Still, protect yourself. Get somebody that knows real estate, that can help you. Because yeah, there are people that will try to screw you. But I say I can tell you that here at least most people seem to be pretty honest and pretty good people. So uh, and even even with this guy that turned out to be bad, we met a lot of good people that worked for him that we continue to work with today. To like we needed to have a bookshelf built, so we hired the same guy that did the carpenter stuff, that built the
Mhm.
stairwell and stuff like that. So you meet good people that way. You develop reputation. You know who's good, who's not. You get good people, and like if you have a good architect, the architect can recommend good people to come do the work for you. And overall, the experience was good. And overall, people are honest, and I never felt like people were really trying to screw me out of anything. The I just, his problem was there was nothing against me being a gringo shanky, right? His problem is I don't know what his problem was, but he was just disappearing on everybody. So it wasn't just us.
Okay, that makes sense. No, this is really cool. We could have done a whole dedicated episode just to the property construction experience for real.
No, I really could. Could go on and on and on about this, but
Yeah, we almost should have. Might have to do a little part two then.
sure, if people are interested, we can talk more. But nice
That would be
stuff.
cool. That's all the time we have. That's all the time we have time for today. I'm losing it. I'm on very low sleep. But dude, thank you so much for jumping on and telling us a little bit more about your story. I've been seeing you coming up on X for probably over a year now, and I was just kind of curious what you were up to, and really glad we had this conversation and made the connection.
Yeah, me too. This is really great talking to you. So, and we'll stay connected on X for sure.
Absolutely. And guys, leave a comment if you want us to do a round two, a deep dive. I think there's a lot of appetite for all things real estate in Argentina. So maybe we could work on something there for sure.
Sounds like a plan.
Awesome. So we'll wrap it up. This has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, our guest today, BowTiedYanqui, also known as the Sovereign Wolf. You can find him on Twitter at BowTiedYanqui, YANQUI. There's a link in the description as well to his Twitter account, so you can follow him directly there, DM him, all that good stuff. And please subscribe to the podcast as well. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests like the BowTiedYanqui, and you won't want to miss an episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Ciao for now.